Let's set the scene, and I guarantee you have been here before. You're just having a totally normal, relaxed conversation with someone you know well. Maybe you're grabbing coffee, maybe you're driving. Then, out of nowhere, the vibe completely shifts. They look you dead in the eye and drop a harsh, entirely unprovoked accusation right in your lap. They call you manipulative, or they claim you're hiding something. Boom. Instantly, you feel that massive spike of adrenaline punch you right in the chest, don't you? Your heart rate shoots up, and your brain goes into hyperdrive, frantically searching your memory banks, trying to find exactly where you messed up. You immediately switch into defense mode, explaining your true intentions, desperately wanting to prove that their negative judgment is completely off base. You assume, because it's just a natural human reaction, that their words are a direct reflection of something you did. And my friend, this is exactly the moment where your internal frame completely shatters into a million pieces. Now listen to me. You are not weak for reacting this way. You really aren't. You're simply playing a highly rigged game using the entirely wrong rulebook. Since day one, we've all been conditioned by society to believe that every single critique we receive is valid feedback. Society practically begs you to constantly psychoanalyze yourself and bend over backwards to accommodate everyone else's feelings. But here's the catch. This over-attunement to external opinions turns you into someone deeply dependent on validation. It essentially morphs you into this anxious, exhausted detective, desperately trying to solve a fabricated mystery that doesn't even exist. But let me hit you with a cold, undeniable truth, something that might completely change how you view your relationships.
Sometimes a vicious attack is not a description of you at all. In reality, it's a dark confession in disguise. Today we are going to completely dismantle a very specific, very toxic psychological trap. We're going to expose exactly why people accuse others of their own hidden motives and how you can stop falling for it. To really get why this happens, we have to pop the hood and look at the mechanics of the human ego. Think of your brain as the ultimate survival machine. Sure, it's designed to protect your physical body, but it also works endlessly to protect your psychological identity. People desperately want to believe that they are fundamentally good, rational, and moral actors. But let's be honest, human nature is deeply flawed and full of dark, chaotic impulses. A person might harbor some intense insecurities, or maybe a really strong desire to deceive and manipulate. Now, admitting these toxic traits to themselves, that would cause massive cognitive dissonance. Processing that dissonance requires an immense, agonizing amount of emotional energy. And frankly, the insecure mind just cannot handle the heavy weight of its own shadow. Because of this mental fragility, the brain utilizes a primitive, almost magical defense mechanism. In behavioral psychology, they call this projection. Honestly, it is a brilliant but highly destructive illusion. When a person absolutely cannot tolerate a negative trait within themselves, they subconsciously eject it. They copy-paste their own dark motives and fears and assign them directly to someone else, usually you. Imagine they have a pile of rotting psychological garbage in their own mind, and instead of cleaning it up, they just toss it over your fence and blame you for the smell. Owning their flaws feels deeply threatening to their fragile ego, so pointing the finger at you is a cheap, easy hack to survive mentally. It instantly relieves their internal pressure and gives them this false, intoxicating hit of superiority. Now, back in the ancestral environment, protecting your social image was literally a matter of life or death for tribal survival. But in modern relationships, this ancient biological glitch becomes a severe liability. When you face someone's projection, you aren't facing reality. You are facing a manufactured reality. And if you engage with it, you trigger a vicious dopamine loop. First, you feel the agonizing pain of a false accusation. Then, you scramble, hustling to provide a mountain of evidence of your good character just to soothe that pain. This traps you in a brutal cycle of intermittent reinforcement. You basically become addicted to seeking closure from the exact person who is fundamentally incapable of giving it to you. You are sweating, trying to prove your innocence in a courtroom where the judge is completely blind. But let's drag this concept out of the clouds of psychological theory and look at everyday, messy reality. This fatal error plays out in very specific, highly predictable ways. I'm going to give you 3 applied, real-world insights so you can recognize this trap the second it springs. The first insight involves the deeply controlling personality. Imagine you decide to finally set a firm, healthy personal boundary with someone. You calmly state what you will no longer tolerate in your life. Simple, right? Well, a controlling person will instantly panic at this display of quiet power. And what do? They will immediately accuse you of trying to control them. They will look at your healthy boundary and label it as a toxic form of manipulation. Why does this happen? Because they are absolutely terrified of losing their grip on you. Their entire operating system relies heavily on their ability to dictate your behavior. So when you step out of line, their internal reality shatters. They project their own massive need for control directly onto your actions. Now, a man who lacks frame control will instantly panic at this accusation. He'll backtrack, soften his stance, and start apologizing just to prove he isn't manipulative. Essentially, he surrenders his own boundary just to manage their distorted perception. This behavior broadcasts a desperate need to keep the peace at all costs, and sadly, it completely destroys his perceived social value. All right, let's move to the second crucial insight. The dishonest person obsessed with trust. Consider a dynamic where someone constantly questions your absolute loyalty. They demand to know your location, obsessively monitor your schedule, and frequently accuse you of hiding things or having secret motives. The highly reactive man will internalize this suspicion as his own personal failure. He assumes he just hasn't provided enough verbal proof of his value yet. So what does he do? He starts over-communicating. He sacrifices his own privacy just to make them comfortable. He completely abandons his own daily mission just to act as their personal emotional regulator. But here's the truth. This is a massive deception designed to keep you compliant and totally exhausted. People who are fundamentally dishonest assume that the entire world operates exactly like they do. Their internal landscape is built on lies and hidden agendas. Because they play a dirty game, they just expect that you are doing the exact same thing. Their constant accusations of betrayal are actually a roadmap of their own mind. Their suspicion is entirely disconnected from your perceived flaws. When you twist yourself into knots trying to prove your honesty, you lose. You validate their chaotic reality and forfeit your own walking away power. A genuinely high-value man knows that his integrity is not a fluctuating currency that needs constant defending. This brings us to the third applied insight, the insecure attack on genuine confidence. Let's say you have spent years doing the hard work of mastering your own internal mechanics. You operate from a state of massive internal abundance. You can walk into a room and simply exist without seeking anyone's approval. You maintain absolute frame control just through the discipline of your non-reaction. An insecure person is going to find your quiet power incredibly offensive. They will look at your unshakable detachment and immediately label it as pure arrogance. They'll accuse you of thinking you're superior to everyone else in the room.
This is perhaps the most common form of social projection you will ever face. You see, an insecure mind operates from a position of profound internal scarcity. They desperately need constant external validation to forcefully soothe their internal chaos. They literally cannot fathom a reality where a man simply does not need the room to like him. Your silent confidence triggers a painful reminder of their own loud desperation. So, they project their own obsession with social hierarchy right onto you. They attack your confidence specifically because it highlights their own weakness. If you try to shrink yourself down to make them comfortable, you destroy your credibility. You become an exhausting liability instead of a respected equal. Now, I need to address something that drives me crazy. The modern self-improvement space aggressively pushes a very dangerous myth about criticism. Society loves to tell you that every piece of feedback holds a hidden truth.
They claim that if an accusation triggers you, it must be entirely accurate. They demand that you sit down and emotionally process every single insult thrown your way just to look authentic and vulnerable. Let me be crystal clear about this catastrophic structural flaw. This over-attunement actively destroys your internal foundation. A man who constantly internalizes other people's psychological garbage is deeply weak. He forces himself to carry the emotional baggage of literally everyone he meets. It's like walking through life, letting every passerby throw a heavy rock into your backpack. Just observe the stark difference between two totally distinct behavioral profiles. First, observe the man who operates without a solid internal core. He hears a wild accusation and immediately treats it as absolute, undeniable proof of his guilt. He writes a long, dramatic paragraph defending his entire life history. He completely abandons his own reality to eagerly engage in their fictional drama. In a split second, the observer's brain registers this highly anxious mixed signal, and he reduces himself to a needy pawn in their game. Now, observe the man who has genuinely mastered his psychological boundaries. He encounters the exact same aggressive projection. Yes, he still feels that primitive biological spike of adrenaline in his chest, but instead of reacting, he applies pure, unshakable rational detachment. He does not write an emotional paragraph or interrogate them about their logic. He simply allows their distorted words to hang empty in the air. Let it sit there. He understands that most human behavior has absolutely nothing to do with him. He knows that outcome independence is the ultimate display of quiet power. Look, you cannot simply wish away your biological programming, and you certainly can't positive think your way out of a physiological reaction. You must implement strict practices to physically regain control of your perception. Think of these safe practices as structural guardrails for your mind. They will completely eliminate the space for internal self-deception and reactive panic. The first practice is building a strict internal delay system. When someone launches a character accusation at you, your brain naturally wants to seek immediate clarity. You must aggressively override this weak impulse to defend yourself. Force yourself to take a step back and ask a highly analytical question. Is this objective behavioral feedback, or is this emotional leakage? Objective feedback focuses on a specific, tangible action you just took. Emotional leakage is a sweeping, dramatic judgment about your hidden motives. If it is a guess about your internal thoughts, it is almost always projection. Force your brain to separate the cold, physical reality from their tragic, cinematic narrative. This single practice completely eliminates the chaotic, mixed signals that destroy your frame. The second safe practice is the aggressive pattern audit. You must rely on hard evidence instead of shifting daily moods. When you're accused of a dark trait, you must look at your own history. Compare their sudden emotional accusation with your actual behavioral pattern over time. Ask yourself, do I have a consistent, undeniable history of this specific failure? If it is not a repeating pattern in your life, then it is not yours to carry. You must discard the assumption entirely and leave it right at their feet where it belongs. A high-value man simply does not accept unverified packages into his internal world. The third practice is the implementation of the mirror boundary. You have to stop endlessly explaining your reality to people who are fully committed to misunderstanding you. When you identify a clear projection, you must pivot your energy instantly. Do not justify your actions. Do not argue against their fictional claims. Respond with absolute silence, or maybe a totally neutral, unbothered statement. Allow their accusation to act as a mirror, reflecting their own chaos right back at them. Then, direct your intense focus immediately back toward the brutal friction of your own mission. Pour that massive mental energy into optimizing your own resources and skills. Listen to me. You have probably spent years playing the exhausting role of the anxious defendant. You've drained your energy trying to decode the accusations of chaotic people. You truly believed that if you just provided enough evidence, they would finally respect you. But I hope you now clearly understand the hidden mechanics behind this silent failure. Your constant willingness to defend yourself is exactly what destroys your perceived value in the first place. Often, the most dangerous threats in your life aren't external obstacles. They are the false identities that others assign to you. Real maturity begins the exact moment you stop trying to catch every weapon thrown at you. You are no longer a reactive pawn, terrified of a false social spotlight. You now possess the cold, rational framework required to step back, observe, and protect your peace. Not every judgment deserves a VIP entry pass into your personal identity. Some of that darkness belongs entirely to the person who delivered it. Remember, respect is never successfully negotiated through desperate explanations or highly emotional paragraphs. It is accumulated through undeniable behavioral consistency and an unbreakable internal frame. So, the next time someone accuses you of a motive you do not possess, you have a choice. Will you surrender your reality to jump into the mud and fight their demons? Or will you silently walk away, keep your frame, and build your own empire?